on support for members with knowledge exchange and development. And of course, the issue of representation is important in this case. So we definitely need to know something about our members. Now, there are some critiques about LTAs and also about KOTESOL in particular. So one critique is general from the literature. Kirkham says that LTAs often do not represent the larger mass of teachers in a country. And that's usually because they're focused on one sector or one geographical region. And this has implications for inclusivity, non-representation, and voice. Now, in terms of KOTESOL, one critique that we saw on our Facebook page just before the conference in January is that it has never been able to represent Korean English language education, but just a few, foreign university teachers. So we see that there's some problems here, maybe. There's also a lack of research that's been done. So on KOTESOL membership, there has been selective research, again, maybe on those professors or leaders of Korea TESOL, or some membership data might have been used to look at other aspects like job satisfaction or teaching effectiveness, but not really at ourselves. And so the challenge here is for us to become researching associations, that is language teacher associations that do research on and for themselves. And I have 3 questions today. So the first is, what do we know about our membership? What can we guess? Maybe based on experience or whatever. And what are some things we don't know? And this will lead to a 4th question, which is the purpose here. And that's to figure out how to move forward. So let's start at the beginning. Right now we have 353 members. Well, actually right now was the 31st of January. So it might be a little bit higher now, but this is quite low. It's just a snapshot. So all of these numbers on this graph that Robert Dickey shared with me are just snapshots. And there's of course fluctuation within the year and any year, but I think it's quite low given the record. And of course, with the pandemic and the decline of English in Korea, that's maybe normal, but yeah, maybe something to think about. How do we move forward? So for this study, I had to go through an application procedure and collect some data, and I was able to check some boxes like the ones that we see here on this form. But not all the data was available, so I also had to do some investigation online through various sites to find out if I could find the gaps. And we don't have a lot of data, so I just did a simple Excel analysis, and that's what I'm going to share with you now. So the first question was, what do we know about our current membership? Well, we know that most members are full members. There was only one single student on the whole list. So that's maybe somewhere, an area we need to work on. In terms of their membership status, 33.4% are lifetime members, which could indicate stability. However, we don't know that they're all still in Korea. And in fact, when we look at the residency and chapter information, we know that 1/4 of our membership does not live in Korea. That may consist of people who have already left Korea, or some of you who are joining us tonight who may be just joining us for this occasional event, like the international conference. So we have about 74% of our membership to consider. And we see that about 31% comes from the Seoul, Yongin, Suwon, Gyeonggi area, which is below average. I mean, 353 is not a high number given the population of people in Korea. But in the capital region in particular, that's where 50% of the population is concentrated. So this is a bit low. For nationality, I could only collect the information for one country, but I know that some of our members have dual citizenship. So this is a little bit inaccurate, perhaps. But what we see clearly is that the number of Korean colleagues that are amongst us is quite low. And then for the non-Korean colleagues, we have about 82%, and about 70% come from those common 7 countries that are typically recruited, that we typically recruit from. And then more than that, 56% come from North America alone. So there's very much a concentration here in our membership, and that may or may not be reflective of the actual status, but I'm kind of pretty sure that it's quite similar. What we see here in terms of years of teaching is that I might call our members quite experienced, because 62% have more than 10 years of experience, and only 6% have fewer than 2 years, right? So that's interesting. It may also be correlated with the level of education. So based on the records I could find, about 75% of our teachers have at least a graduate level education, but the majority of them are definitely master's level holders. So those are things that I know. Now, there are two things that I could kind of guess, sex, not gender. So based on what I could find, it's about 50-50. And the other thing is that through my personal experience and through some information in mailing addresses, I could see that 48% at least, so I'm guessing that's a low number, are college or university level teachers. And I think that it's really hard to know about the other categories, but there are probably definitely some areas where we may find it useful to, recruit new members, especially maybe entry-level areas. So when it comes to the third question, there's actually a lot that we do not know about current KOTESOL membership. And so I already mentioned occupation, things that might be related to class, so like tenure track or not, gender for sure. We collect titles, but doctor may not indicate clearly what kind of gender the person identifies with. I put sexual orientation. Now, some of these may seem a bit controversial, but I'm looking at it from a social justice perspective. And we have Women and Gender Equality SIG, and we have a People of Color Teacher SIG. A few years ago, some teachers were talking about starting an LGBTQ plus, etc. SIG, but that didn't happen. If we have a lot of members and we know about their sexual orientation, then it may be helpful to set up that kind of SIG as well. Other things, the relevance of their degrees or age. Maybe we have a fair amount of senior professors or teachers, I don't know. Visa status and family status, those types of things could tell us something about the stability of our members. One time we had talked about having daycare services at conferences. Well, if we know how many people have families, that kind of service could be interesting. So I've just presented a little bit of information that I've been able to collect. The data was quite limited in terms of the number of members. And of course, some information was missing and some information was not current because people do not update their accounts. If that's you, please go in and update your accounts so the next research will be better. And generally my analysis was quite simple. But basically we can see that if we have a certain understanding of the diversity in our membership, we will be able to direct recruitment efforts. And learning more about our membership could help us develop new or better membership services. It could also help us develop our organization because we'll maybe see the talents and interests and areas that people have studied. And it could also help us to orient SIG activities and maybe more. So the question I'm leaving you with today is how to move forward. How can we increase the number of members and how can we increase the diversity of members? So these are my resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And I think we're moving on to Kara now and Anika. So you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the People of Color SIG and our presentation for the Diversity Committee panel discussion. My name is Kara Wagoner. And Anika Casem will join me as well as we discuss issues that surround people of color. Thank you again for coming out tonight. So some brief background on the People of Color SIG. As Jocelyn mentioned in her presentation, due to lack of data, we don't really know for sure how many members in KOTESOL identify as a person of color or POC. One thing I can kind of tell though, from the past few years, is that the POC SIGs numbers have decreased since its inception a few years ago. So why is that? Why is it we're just not attracting more diverse people within KOTESOL and hearing those voices? What can we do to create a more welcoming environment for people of color to feel safe and heard within our organization? One of the first things we should do, we should try to find people by strengthening our staff skills, as Rhea mentioned a few years ago when she was president of the Busan chapter. We should reach out and get to know people, figure out and learn about their interest. Once we do that, do the research. Yes, we should do the research. Too often people of color have to constantly explain certain concepts and ideas, and that can get a bit exhausting, so doing some of the research will help. After you do some research and learn more, ask yourself, how can you be an ally? We should build bridges within our organization. Ask people if they want to get involved. I mean, the worst they can do is say no. Figure out, well, who should they talk to? I know sometimes coming into a brand new space can be a bit overwhelming or even scary for some people. So if you know someone, introduce them to others. Figure out what their skills and talents are. Everyone comes to our organization with these different skills and ideas, and it's best to match skills and ideas with where people fit best. Then ask them if they know the different ways to be part of KOTESOL. We have lots of different SIGs and different committees. Let's pinpoint them and kind of match them with where they would fit best. And Anika had something to add as well. Anika, I think you're muted.
My mute. I got it now. So I love this quote from Nakayama and Krizik, who are writers on the ideas of race and whiteness and things like that. One of the quotes they pull or cite is, although people all exist within what we might call the strata of subjectivity, they are located at particular positions within the strata, each of which enables and constrains the possibilities of experience, but even more of representing and legitimizing those representations. We all experience life differently, and because of things we can and cannot experience. So while no one asks for these limits, they've been placed on every single one of us. And when I say us, that includes all people within the people of color community and outside of it. So if you are a POC, you are experiencing race, and if you are white, you experience race as well. Our experiences are different, but they are rooted in racism when we are treated differently according to the color of our skin. So how we experience these things tint how we perceive and legitimize the world and others in it. And I think that contributes to whether or not an environment can seem diverse or feel like it's welcoming to other people.
And going along with what Anika said, we all experience things differently. All of us come to KOTESOL with different life experiences and things that have happened to us. Hopefully most are good, but we've all experienced maybe not so good things as well. When a person of color comes to you and shares one of their life experiences with you, first understand that they trusted you enough to tell you what happened to them. And then validate what they went through, express empathy, even if it's never happened to you. Saying things like, well, that's never happened to me, or are you sure you're not being too sensitive? Those type of statements don't really help the situation.
And I'm just going to add to what Kara said. So we all know biological race does not actually exist, but even though it's something that doesn't exist, there are material consequences for categorizing people according to physical characteristics and then attaching meaning to these classifications. These are foundational in racism. So we live with these consequences. And while there are some people who want to say otherwise, history and statistics contradict those opinions, as we can see with Black Lives Matter, anti-immigration laws, prison populations, and things like that. One may not feel like racism exists because they don't see people being abused and harmed in an explicit manner, since many people have been fooled into believing that racism only exists as being violent or mean to others based on skin color. And we don't want to believe that the people around us are possible of being racist as well, right? So unfortunately, the insidious nature of racism is that it can hide and be implicit. When it's not explicit, people make excuses for others in order to err on the side of caution, lest someone is accused of being racist and made to feel uncomfortable for being ignorant. But that is what makes implicit, structural, and systematic racism dangerous. People can hide their racist acts, and to hear questions such as, how do you know it was a racist? It's just really another indignity, as if people of color don't know what racism is despite being shaped by it and living in it daily. As teachers of color, there are expectations we don't get to choose, or experiences we don't get to choose. But being KOTESOL is a choice for us. That's one of the things we can choose. But if someone in KOTESOL is creating an environment that feels unsafe and unwelcoming and racist, then teachers of color are going to disengage. So TOC, we join and we pay membership fees to be a part of a community that believes in professional development and teachers helping teachers. And we should feel as safe as other members who are not TOC.
Thank you, Anika. And Anika and I have some experiences that we can give as examples. For instance, a few years ago, when I was first applying to university positions, there was one university's advertisement that flat out said, if you are of Korean background, please do not apply. So for gyopos or adoptees like myself, we're foreign in every way, except our faces, so we weren't seen as foreign enough.
Right, there's like some internalized essentialism happening there, right? If you're Korean, you're going to be like this, and there's no way you can be, a good English teacher. Right? And I have a little bit of that same experience as well. People in Korea and the US assume I'm not good at English. I've had white Americans tell me I have an accent that sounds Asian. And if I do, like, what really is the problem? I've been educated and I know how to teach English. That doesn't make me less. And it's a question that I get constantly, it feels like, is where are you from? But where are you really from? And if saying the United States or from Colorado or California does not satisfy them, they move on to asking where my parents are from, which is really no one's business but mine. And it makes me feel awkward and strange that I have to defend myself for being brown, but coming from an English-speaking country.
So with Anika and myself, from the Asian American experience, we're always going to be seen as foreign or other in America, but not foreign enough within the Asian context. So that makes things a little bit tricky for us. One thing that we can do within KOTESOL is to listen to new views. I'm sure we've heard of these ideas before, as they've been in the news quite a bit. The ideas that white privilege exists and Black Lives Matter. Now, a lot of people of color hold these views because they've lived these experiences. And I know it can be very easy to get defensive. You're like, well, we shouldn't be saying these type of things. Rather than have that type of response, maybe try educating ourselves about new ideas instead. We could learn something new and definitely learn some empathy. After we educate ourselves about these new ideas, well, what are we doing to educate others about these views? As we continue to invite and include more people within our organization, we should build longer tables, not higher walls. People of color need to feel like KOTESOL is a safe and welcoming space for them. Inviting more people of color should be seen as a good thing. Unlike a Harvard study from 2016 that stated sometimes when women and minorities promote diversity, it comes back to penalize us. So what can we do next? Well, we need to make sure KOTESOL, it's a safe and welcoming space for everyone. We should be willing to learn new things and challenge old thinking. Be reflective and reflexive if you said something or did something, maybe ignorant in the past or even now, and be aware of acting out in defense, and become an ally to others. So some discussion questions Anika and I will take during the breakout rooms. Now, how can we increase the number of people of color in KOTESOL? What can we all do to be anti-racist? What can be done when our members are being harassed? And what have you done when someone is being ignorant or racist? Here's our sources and our contact information. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, and that means we're moving on to Anika again and Rhea, this time for the women and gender.
That was fantastic. Both of those presentations, really, thank you guys. Okay, so let me get into my screen here. Can everyone see that fine? Hear me okay? Great. So my name is Rhea, and currently I'm the first vice president in the KOTESOL National Council. Anika will present with me, and she is currently the chapter president of the Busan area. We are also co-workers, and we've known each other for a few years, and Anika's awesome, I can tell you for sure. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this idea emerged. Well, we began out of what I felt was necessity. Since I joined KOTESOL, I have been organizing events and sitting on the National Council and being involved, and I could feel that there were some forces at work that were implicitly a bit difficult to manage, as you can see by my picture. And we are in Korea. We're in a global context, but we're in Korea at the moment. So hopefully this will take me out. Right now, we're in the COVID-19 crisis. Women are being hit harder than ever before. There are issues of domestic violence. Suicide rate for young women Koreans is very high right now due to lack of employment and a lot of pressure. This is from 2018. So you can see the OECD countries. This is Korea. This is the gender wage gap. So Korea is lagging very far behind. We could analyze various reasons why: Korea, Japan, Israel, the States, Canada. So you can find this later. I'll make it available.
Rhea, I think we might not be seeing the same screen as you.
Okay, sorry about that.
I still see the how did we begin screen.
Well, this slide will be available. You'll be able to check the links later on. Sorry about that. Now, the SIG was founded in 2019. Minji Kim was a chapter council member that I worked with in Busan, and I found out she was doing amazing work with her students, teaching them about feminism and the United Nations sustainability goals for gender equality. So it just started to emerge as an idea that we wanted to implement in KOTESOL and felt was necessary. I've looked at social media pages, and as a person who works in the internal parts of KOTESOL as well as event planning, and I felt that representation was a serious issue, gender representation, people of color as well.
Minji and Anika and Vanessa Virgil and I pulled together a panel presentation at KAWS, which is the Asian Association of Women's Studies. It's the biggest organization in Asia, and we presented at Ewa Women's University before the pandemic hit. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm making mention the light blue color are some events that have happened indirectly through liaisons with different social justice members within KOTESOL, which I feel is success. It's good to honor the successes that we've had. We did a fundraiser for Kumpa at our last international conference, thanks to Vanessa's initiative. There's a great interview on YouTube that Lucinda performed with Minji that goes into more detail about how she felt growing the SIG. And sadly, Minji is not with us right now because she has just too much pressure for her job to remain as a KOTESOL member this year. And the Busan chapter member, Alexis Nelson, also put on a great social justice event for BLM this year, as well as a statement was put out for George Floyd. So some good things are happening that people don't really know about. Certainly it's not enough though. This is from our presentation at Ewa, and you can see a quick snapshot of the YouTube video that I urge you to check out later. These slides will be available to you. I was the moderator of the panel, so I introduced how the SIG emerged, some issues that I felt were happening internally, and Minji focused on the work that she did in her classroom at a high school in Busan. So she would have her students do reflective practice on where they fall in the gender spectrum and analyzing power structures, how it affects them in their life, and brought it right back to the United Nations sustainability goals, asking her students how they could implement more equity. I will have Anika speak about her part shortly, and Vanessa did a fantastic job talking about gender bias in classrooms. In most classrooms, teachers tend to give boys more talking time, ask them more questions, and give them more attention. Anika, I'd like you to share your experience of that event.
Presenting at Ewa was a lot of fun. My background is not in education, but in intercultural communication and critical cultural studies. And so I really love getting into the mess of class, gender, and race and how that shapes our world and who has the power and what are they doing with it. So I became a teacher because I wanted to unteach these things, and I'd been inspired by decolonizing methodologies by Linda Tuai Smith, if you're familiar with her. So I thought it was important to kind of live that, and it was fun to talk about what I'd studied and what I live and breathe, being forever foreign, the identity and gender studies and things like that, and how I always am going to be identified by other, and how as women or people of color, we're always going to be on the margins of society. And AWOL was just a really great place to be with other teachers and academics and get to hear about the research in the field, like the people who are creating the philosophy, theory, and ideas that we use in our discourse now and who are moving the conversation forward. So if you have the opportunity to go, I would highly recommend this experience.
Thanks, Anika. I'd like to touch on future goals. So generally all across KOTESOL, it's been a very difficult year for leaders and just burnout and people dealing with COVID-19. Our SIG has been on a hiatus, more or less, until this event throughout this pandemic. So we are hoping to invite speakers. If anyone's listening and wants to speak on some of the topics related, we would happy to be hosting you at chapter events that happen monthly with all the different chapters. We will have some kind of national conference this fall, probably online, but don't quote me, I'm not sure yet. We know that next year's international conference is already being discussed at the moment, and we would really like to have some gender equity topic-based things happening there. Personally, I would like to interview Ryu So-yeon. She has a feminist bookstore in, I think it's Gwanakdong in Seoul. It's called Dali Bom, apparently named after her 2 cats, but I guess in Korean, Dalebo means being a bit different as well. And another person I would potentially like to interview or make contact with is Imi Kyung, the president of the Korea International Cooperation Agency. We want to continue to be a liaison, but a better liaison, and keep checking privilege, working on nonviolent communication, raising awareness of the issues inside the way KOTESOL works, as well as the way that we brand ourselves and the way that we communicate on social media. Really want us to keep expanding and become more intersectional, do more research and develop more media, perhaps some blog postings. Part of the problem is that some of the people managing the SIG have so many other hats that the SIG gets neglected. So we want to reach out and find more people who are interested in being involved. Something that might be mentioned later, but KOTESOL for a while had a diversity chair who had a voting position on the National Council. That person has stepped down, and we're looking for preferably a committee of people to take on that position, someone who could emerge naturally from our organization. So that involves our SIG, but all of the other SIGs as well. Here is some information, something to inspire you. We recommend that you check out these resources. I can make it available as an asset on the Eventzilla page. So when you go to our presentation, you'll be able to see this PPT with the links and some other research. How are we doing for time there, Lucinda?
You have 2 minutes left.
Okay. Well, I'd like to invite Anika, who helped me compile this list, to come back and speak. One that I would like to mention, I hope everyone has seen, is Kim Ji-young, born 1982. I did manage to see this movie when it first came out in the theaters, and it was full of women crying because it was a very, from outside Korea, it was criticized for being quite watered down and too subtle. But these are very sensitive issues to bring up as a person working, or as a person living in a household, as a person interacting as a female in a country that has a very, very thick glass ceiling and a lot of things going on. But I'd highly recommend checking out the film or the book. Anika and I were talking about some of these resources earlier, and I really liked what she had to say about Half the Sky. Do you want to make mention of that, Anika?
So Half the Sky, the title is based on a Chinese proverb that men and women hold half the sky. And they look at women's issues and how women are still treated as second-class citizens, especially in third world countries. Like they talk about, there are countries where, you know, they value having men and they would rather have a son than a daughter. And, you know, they'll pay attention and make sure their son gets the best medical care, whereas their daughter, if she gets hurt, they're not going to care for her. And how some of these girls, they find their way out of these things through education and things like that. Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. Sometimes we feel like to be a feminist, there's certain ideals and things you have to reach, but she talks about, you know, she loves rap, but she knows rap can be misogynistic, right? So sometimes we think we can't participate in certain things because we're feminists, but she kind of like talks about this in fun ways and how she has a life that is contradictory.
And when we were discussing that, it came out in the conversation that earlier this week, I was talking to a Korean woman friend of mine who's now living in the States. She mentioned to me, she's maybe 30 years old, so her mom maybe is in her late 50s, and she said that her mom had actually had more than 6 abortions because the family wanted a son. And so this is only a generation away that women have had this incredible pressure to fill this gender role gap in Korean society. I think we're going to wrap up, but as I mentioned, these slides will be available as an asset with the links that you didn't get to see. So thank you for sharing time with us today.
All right, which means we're going to switch over to Julian and Rhea speaking from the environmental SIG.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Kia ora tātou. Annyeonghaseyo, and welcome to our session from the Environmental Justice SIG. Please bear with me as I remember how to present this in presentation mode. Here we go. that working? Hey, great. All right, thanks. I've got far too many slides because I need to control how much I gabble, otherwise I rabbit and carry on far too much. But the title we decided on was COVID and the Climate, Unequal Effects, Shared Opportunities. And that speaks to the fact that the climate and other environmental impacts affect us industrialized and non-industrialized human people differently. Obviously wealthier and usually more industrialized people can cope with the impacts more easily. However, the shared opportunities are that we have the opportunity to create community. The challenge is not just to reduce the impacts of industrialization on all species, including our own, but to create more of a community out of that. So speaking of community, hi, I'm Julian, and this is Rhea.
Hi again.
Yeah, we're going to cover these 5 areas very briefly, review what we've done so far, look at our plans going forward. Rhea will talk about the relationship between COVID-19 era and our climate challenge and wider environmental issues. And then we're going to finish off with a couple other little issues there too, which is actually the main points of the whole thing, really. But to get through part A to C first, yeah, we were established in 2015. We basically sprouted out of Jocelyn's great work establishing Social Justice SIG. I was generally posting too often. I'm interested in general, social justice issues, not just to do with environment. But that became an overarching concern of mine, and I could see that other people were kind of interested in it sometimes too. And so I thought it was important to establish somewhere else to post as well. I also started talking, giving other sessions, and set up this blog site, which you can find, where I've posted the slides like this set, for example, are right there now too. So you can follow us, follow this talk, and have a look at the history of talks I've given over the last few years, right there. Yeah, we established with Rhea and some other good people, we established the SIG in 2018 and kept giving talks. That was generally throughout the year, but we really established in the IC right at the end of 2018. And major significant win was getting vegan cheese available on the for refreshments table in 2018, 2019. And also getting a Facebook page established where we've been sharing brainstorming and ideas for lesson plans. Please find that there. You can find an active link clicking on here to that if you want to join in and see what we're doing some more. And last year we were really in survival mode, as Rhea was saying, for the other SIG as well. But we've been maintaining, we've actually expanded membership. We've got more people involved, actively contributing ideas on more recent developments in the scientific field or culturally as well. Mostly Sam McDonald is another white guy, New Zealander. So that doesn't speak well to our diversity, but the benefit though is that he is the KFEM liaison person for non-Korean membership, I suppose. He speaks Korean well and is married to a Korean, and he's going to start giving a series of sessions talking about international media attention being given to the climate crisis to KFEM members. For people who don't know, KFEM is the umbrella group. It's sort of like the Greenpeace in Korea, except it covers a lot of different environmental issues. KFEM, Korea Federation, the environment movement. Okay, future, we want to, number one goal is to, now that we've got established in our own kind of identity as a group and got proven we can last through the challenge of last year and got going for a year or two, it is past time already to develop more connections and associations and allyship with people of color for English teachers in Korea and overseas as well who are interested in this issue, these issues. And of course, local Korean ESL teachers too, who share the interest. Yeah, we want to continue. I'm going to continue with my blog and Facebook page, and anyone can contribute to presenting or ideas. But more concrete ideas are addressing the plastics issue and overpackaging, talking about environmental degradation in general, and the climate crisis in particular, and how we can deal with that, how we have been and how we can do more in the future. Another concrete idea is for post-COVID era sailing experience dealing with the plastics waste issue. One example of communication with people of color group, which I'm really glad to have see has been established recently, is would they like to go for the sailing experience separately or together or both with other people? So it's an example of a question I'd like to pose directly to people. Just to show, we've done a little bit of research already. I've made contact with Captain E.J. Ho, and he is well known in the expat community for being very kind and open to sharing his yacht with people and giving great yachting experiences. Finally, I'd really like to get a collection of lesson plans and experiences people have shown, not just me, but other people around the country, teaching university or high school, any level. For one example, for one lesson plan that I've been putting together is looking at comparatives and superlatives. And you can see more of that there. And look at some other, oh goodness, what happened? Some other examples there. I'm gonna shut up now and hand over to Rhea, who's gonna talk more about the COVID impact thing.
Thanks, Jillian. Yeah, Jillian and I go way back. I met him at a climate film festival, and we did a critical mass biking through Busan. I've watched him plan some really cool events. I know Jay-Ho, he is quite a character. Definitely recommend going on a ship with him. When I was doing research on the plenary of this event, Garrett Leonard, I noticed that he had made videos about the climate crisis, and he said COVID-19 is just a mini taste of what is to come, how our world is going to be ravaged by climate change. And as Julian mentioned, people in the North and South are affected completely differently, where industrialized nations are creating climate change and other people have to have their homes torn apart and lives lost. And not enough attention is shed on that in the media. It's really heartbreaking. You know, not only that, but it creates a lot more tension, racial tension within countries when they're struggling. When people are in emergency situations, that's when more violence can emerge. So these are things that we should talk about. Ways to work it into the class. Maybe some of you also watched one of the plenaries, Sophia Mavridi, I believe her name is. She talked about digital literacy and the media. You don't have to explicitly make your whole lesson plan about a social justice issue, but the way that you interact with your students and finding little moments to bring in bits of information can be very, very powerful. As I mentioned, Julian and I work together, me from an event planner perspective, trying to have more content and reach different speakers, and Julian's an expert in all kinds of information. So I think we're out of time now, but that's all I had to say on this topic. Please join us if you're interested. Thanks.
Awesome. Just want to finish on the last point, which is that I felt it was important to make a statement that we're committed to working with people of color and local Koreans interested in this topic. Like I said before, I feel responsible to make the start myself and get a direction going, which I'm happy to continue moving on my own. However, I'm also really happy, even more happy to work with others. And that can include changing direction, changing goals. Yeah, so looking forward to talking more with anyone. Please contact me anytime, and spread the word if you know anyone else who might be interested. Thank you very much. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you so much, Julian and Rhea. So what's going to happen now is we're having self-select breakout rooms, meaning there's going to be 4 breakout rooms, one for each SIG everybody's representing: social justice, people of color, women and gender, environmental. Like I said before, you can jump around if you want to.